The desert didn't end. It simply forgot to begin again. From horizon to horizon, it was only heat and dust, a wide, humming silence that blurred the bones of the earth. Every line was trembling. Every shadow was a lie. The jackal moved through it as though it were smoke. His ribs showed faintly beneath sun-bleached fur. His gait slow but steady. He did not pant, did not look up. The air shimmered too violently for eyes to trust. Somewhere behind him lay the remnants of a road, long since swallowed by sand. The humans had built it once, black ribbon across a continent, straight and proud, but the wind had other plans. It had unstitched their line inch by inch, erasing the direction they'd carved into the world. Now, only fragments remained. A crushed bottle, a strip of tire, a sunburned sign, letters half gone, gas, 14 miles. He passed it without slowing. He could smell the heat radiating from the metal, the memory of touch long after the hand had gone. By late afternoon, the light began to tilt, long shadows cutting like blades across the dunes. The air cooled slightly, the kind of mercy the desert gave, only to watch what you'd do with it. The jackal climbed a ridge and stopped at the crest. Below him stretched a flat basin, once a lake, now only dust and salt. At its center stood a cluster of ruins, concrete husks, their edges softened by sandstorms. A human settlement, forgotten before the maps had stopped caring. He descended. Each step sent a thin wave of powder rolling ahead of him. At the basin floor, the air was stiller, heavier. Among the ruins stood a single intact wall, its surface painted with a faded mural, people holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun. The faces were gone, peeled by time, erased by wind. Only their shadows remained, burned into the paint. The jackal sniffed the wall. The scent was weak, old metal, old smoke, and something else. Food, once. He sat down in the dust, the picture before him glowing faintly in the last of the sun. His breath came shallow and quiet. Behind him, the wind died completely. For a moment, nothing moved. From the north, two figures appeared, human, their outlines wavering in the heat. A man and a woman, carrying nothing but a single metal canteen between them. Their clothes were torn, their faces streaked with salt. They spoke little. Even their words were too dry for air. When they saw the jackal, they froze. The man whispered, "Don't move!" The woman swallowed hard. "It's just a scavenger." But neither stepped forward. The animal did not retreat. He simply turned his head toward them, eyes dull gold in the dying light. The man raised his hand slowly, not in threat but instinct, as if memory alone told him to. The jackal didn't move. Behind them, the sun had begun to drop. Its light stretched long across the sand, the color shifting from gold to red to the kind of dark that makes even shadows afraid to linger. The woman said softly, "It's watching us." The man's throat clicked dryly. "No, it's watching the sun." They stood there together, two humans, one animal, and a sky that burned itself empty. When the last rim of sun touched the horizon, something strange happened. The light dimmed faster than it should have, as though the desert itself had decided enough was enough. The man turned his eyes away first. The glare was too sharp. When he looked back, the jackal was gone. Night fell hard. The ruins became dark teeth against the sand. The man and woman built a small fire from splintered beams and cardboard scraps. The flame was weak, flickering, but its crackle was the first sound the desert had allowed all day. The woman stared into it. "You think it's true," she said, "that they buried things here before they left?" He poked at the embers with a stick. "Everything gets buried here. But bones come back. Not in this place." The wind shifted, carrying a faint sour smell. Not decay, not quite. Something metallic, old. The man frowned. "You smell that?" The woman nodded. "Yeah. Gasoline," he said. They looked at each other, the first flicker of something like hope. He rose, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped toward the dark beyond the fire. The beam barely reached 20 feet before the sand swallowed it. The woman called softly, "Don't go far." He didn't answer. The sound came again, a faint scuff, a shift of grit. He turned the light toward it. Two yellow eyes looked back. The jackal stood 10 feet away, perfectly still. The wind rippled faintly through his fur, catching the dull shine of scars across his flank. The man lowered the flashlight. You again. The jackal didn't move. Then, slowly, it turned its head, toward the dunes, toward the horizon, where the last trace of sunset had vanished. The man followed its gaze. In the distance, faint lights flickered, low, irregular, like fire through dust. The jackal's ears twitched once, then he began to walk. The man hesitated only a second before following. The woman called after him, "Wait! What are you doing?" But he was already gone, the beam of his light bobbing in the darkness like a dying star. The jackal led him across the salt basin, past half-buried cars and rusted metal. The air smelled stronger now. Gasoline, yes, but something else beneath it. Smoke and rot and memory. When they reached the rise of the dune, the man stopped. The lights weren't fire. They were electric. A small station, concrete, half-collapsed, but glowing faintly from within. Generators, old ones, running. He turned to the jackal, but the animal had vanished again. The man stepped forward slowly, heart hammering. He could hear the hum now, the sound of power running through machines long past their time. The air shimmered with heat. He called out, voice hoarse, "Hello?" No answer. He moved closer, hand outstretched. The light flickered once, twice, then everything went black. Silence returned. And from the darkness, faintly, a sound soft and dry, like footsteps in sand. The man turned the flashlight back on. Nothing there. Only the mural again, painted across the inner wall of the ruined station, people holding hands beneath a yellow sun. He froze. It was the same mural from the lake bed. Only this one had a new figure at the edge. A jackal. Painted in fresh dust, its head turned toward the horizon. By dawn, the wind had erased everything again. Only sand remained. Smooth, perfect, endless. And somewhere beyond the light, a jackal walked west, his tracks vanishing behind him as fast as he could make them. The sun rose pale and thin, and for the first time in years, it did not look down. By dawn, the wind had turned. It came from the west now, dry, heavy, tasting of rust. The horizon shimmered with pale gold that never quite became morning. The desert didn't rise with the sun. It merely changed its color of silence. The woman woke to a dead fire and an absence. No man, no footprints. Only the wind had moved, smoothing the sand until the night seemed like it had never happened. She stood, shielding her eyes, scanning the dunes for the faintest shape. There was nothing, not even a shadow that could be mistaken for one. The canteen lay half buried near the cold ash. She picked it up, shook it. A single drop rolled inside, a sound so small it felt cruel. She whispered, "Daniel?" The desert answered with heat. By mid-morning, she found the tracks, or what was left of them. Just depressions, half softened, leading toward the west ridge. Two sets at first, human and lighter ones beside them. Paw prints. She followed. The prints wove between low dunes, each ridge hiding the next. The sky was a white mirror now. No clouds, no direction. Sweat gathered in the crook of her neck before drying instantly. The air smelled faintly of burnt oil. At the top of the next dune, she stopped. Below her lay what had once been a service station. 3 walls still standing, 1 pump bent sideways, the sign hanging by a thread of rusted chain. The windows were gone, the doors half buried. She saw no movement. Still, she called softly, "Daniel?" The sound fell flat, swallowed by the distance. Then she saw the mark. On the outer wall, not graffiti, not paint. A mural again. The same yellow sun, the same line of human figures beneath it. But this time, the faces had melted into streaks of sand, as though heat itself had dragged them downward. And near the corner, a new image, crude but clear. The jackal again. Head raised toward the fading sun, her throat went dry. She took a step closer. The mural's edges were wet. The pigment hadn't dried yet. Someone, or something, had made it hours ago. Inside, the air was still. The station's roof filtered the sunlight into thin bars. Dust hung like smoke, unmoving. She stepped over debris, paper, a single shoe, shards of glass that reflected her face in jagged pieces. The smell grew stronger the deeper she went. Gasoline. And something else. Burnt cloth. At the back wall, she found the generator. A machine older than she was, coated in sand and rust. Its panel lights were dead, but faint warmth still radiated from it. Recently running. She crouched beside it, pressing her palm against the metal. It hummed faintly like a dying heartbeat. Her whisper barely made a sound. "Daniel, what did you find?" A noise behind her, the scrape of sand. She turned. Nothing. Only the mural again, dim light touching the painted eyes of the jackal. The expression was different now, somehow sharper. The paint glistened slightly, as if still wet. Outside, the wind began to rise. The dunes shifted, fine grains slithering like whispers across the ground. The woman stepped out of the doorway, one hand shielding her face. And there, at the edge of the light, she saw him. Daniel. He stood near the same ridge where the jackal had disappeared the night before. His back was turned, his posture strange. Too rigid, too still. "Daniel!" she shouted, stumbling toward him. He didn't move. When she reached him, she stopped short. His boots were half buried. His skin was the color of clay. His lips moved faintly, but no sound came. "Daniel," she said again, voice trembling, "it's me." Slowly, his head turned. His eyes were wide, reflecting nothing. "The sun," he whispered, voice raw, almost gone. It looked away. Her stomach tightened. What happened? He blinked slowly, his gaze drifting past her shoulder, back toward the horizon. "It's under the sand," he murmured. "Still burning." She grabbed his arm. His skin was cold. "Daniel, we have to go." He looked at her again, and for a brief, broken second, something like recognition passed through him. Then his legs gave out. She caught him, falling to her knees, sand rising around them like smoke. He was breathing, but shallowly. The sun above them glared through the haze, white and blinding. She dragged him back toward the station, step by step, her throat raw, her heartbeat too loud. Behind them, the wind gathered strength. The dunes shifted faster now, reshaping themselves with every gust. And far behind, on the ridge where Daniel had been standing, a single shape appeared. Low, lean, patient. The jackal. Its silhouette trembled in the heat, but its eyes did not. They were fixed on her, unblinking, as if measuring how long she'd last. Then it sat down, head lifted toward the horizon again. The sun hung there, swollen, dimming, lowering just enough that it no longer met his gaze. Inside the ruined station, Daniel lay motionless. The generator ticked softly as it cooled. The mural shimmered faintly in the heat. The woman sat beside him, trembling hands pressed to her temples. "You said it was burning," she whispered. "What is?" Daniel's lips parted. His voice came so quietly she almost didn't hear it. "Not fire." "What then?" He turned his head slightly, eyes unfocused. "The world." Then his breath went still. She stayed there until the shadow of the wall moved across his body, until the sun slipped lower than she had ever seen it fall. Outside, the wind howled once, sharp and brief, then stopped. When she finally looked toward the mural again, the jackal's head had turned. Now, it faced her. That night, the desert cooled but never slept. The sand shifted endlessly, whispering names it did not remember how to pronounce, and somewhere beyond the ridge, the jackal walked again. Slow, deliberate, toward a horizon that refused to meet his eyes. Above him, the sun dimmed without setting, and for the first time in its long life, the light seemed ashamed to look back. The desert turned gray before dawn, not from clouds, but from exhaustion. Every grain of sand seemed to sigh under its own weight. The air was motionless. The silence had texture now, dense enough to lean against. The woman sat outside the station, Daniel's body wrapped in a tarp beside the cold ashes of their last fire. She had not slept. Her eyes were raw from wind and salt, her lips cracked and bleeding. The horizon had not changed all night. It glowed faintly red, as if some hidden ember still smoldered beneath the earth. She whispered, "You said it was burning." Her voice cracked. "But what burns without light?" There was no answer, only the faint rasp of sand sliding against concrete. She turned her face upward. The sun was rising, but wrong. It climbed slow and colorless, pale as bone. Its light cast no warmth, no direction. The dunes looked bleached, stripped of shadow. It felt like standing inside a wound that refused to close. When she looked back toward Daniel's shrouded shape, she saw the paw prints again. Fresh, close. The jackal had come in the night. The tracks led west, toward the low basin, where the wind had once carved dry riverbeds into the earth. She followed, each step crunching faintly against the brittle crust of salt. The air shimmered with heat that wasn't heat, something older, heavier, radiating upward from beneath. She moved without thought, as if the horizon itself were pulling her forward. The first sound came after an hour, a hollow metallic groan, distant but distinct. She stopped, turned her head. The sound came again, from beneath the ground. She crouched and pressed her palm to the sand. The vibration was faint but steady, rhythmic, almost mechanical. It was the same sound that had haunted Daniel's last words, the one that lived beneath the silence. Her throat tightened. Not fire, she whispered, remembering. The world. She kept walking. By midday, the wind rose, thin, sharp, whistling between the dry ridges like something trying to speak but failing. The basin narrowed into a ravine of salt and rock, walls streaked with iron and fossil dust. In its center, half buried, she saw it. A piece of metal protruding from the sand, tall as a man, bent and corroded. She brushed the surface clean. Letters appeared, faded but legible. Solar Station 4, property of Horizon Industries. She blinked slowly, her reflection warped across the dull steel. The sand beneath her boots felt warm now, almost hot. Following the metal spine, she uncovered more of it. Twisted frames, broken panels, wires trailing like vines. Solar collectors, hundreds of them, buried and forgotten. She could almost hear their hum, that faint pulse, mechanical but alive. At the base of the largest panel, the jackal was waiting. He stood motionless, tail low, eyes fixed on her. His fur rippled slightly in the wind, speckled with dust. The woman froze. You, her voice caught. You led him here, didn't you? The jackal didn't move. His gaze was ancient, not curious, not cruel, simply aware. She took a step closer. What do you want from me? Still no answer. Then the air around them shifted. The metal under the sand began to hum, low, rising in tone, as though something deep below had heard her. The vibration grew stronger, resonating through her feet, up her spine, into her skull. She staggered, clutching her head. Stop! The jackal turned his eyes toward the horizon. The sun dimmed. Not a cloud. Not dusk. The light itself faltered, flickering like an old bulb losing current. The air trembled, color draining from the dunes. The woman looked back down at the panels. They were glowing faintly, the faint red pulse of machines still alive under the earth. Heat shimmered across the sand, rising in waves. The jackal moved first, not running, not fleeing. He simply turned and began walking toward the center of the basin, where the sand had begun to sink, slow and deliberate, forming a spiral depression. Wait, she shouted. Stop! But he didn't. She followed anyway. The spiral deepened as she walked, the air around her vibrating now in rhythm with her heartbeat. The hum became layered, low bass from the ground, high ringing from the metal structures around her, and beneath it all, something like breathing. At the center of the basin, she found the opening, a circular hatch half revealed by shifting sand, its edges blackened from old heat. The jackal stood beside it, his paws resting lightly on the rim. The hum ceased. Silence again. The woman approached, every step deliberate. What is this?" she whispered. Her hand brushed the metal. It was warm, almost alive. The jackal looked up at her one last time, eyes steady, gold against the dimming light. Then he stepped into the hole and vanished. She fell to her knees, leaning over the edge. A shaft descended into darkness, lined with glass and steel. The air that rose from it was hot, thick, and metallic. "Daniel," she whispered, "is this what you found?" Then she heard it, faint, far below, the sound of claws against metal, and a heartbeat. By the time the sun touched the horizon again, she was still kneeling at the edge, the light turning her face the color of dust. The wind circled the basin but carried no sound. The hum beneath the earth pulsed once more, slow and deliberate, as though testing its rhythm. She looked west, toward where the light met the sand. It was lowering again, not sinking but bending as if bowing. Her lips parted, the words breaking on dry air. The sun. It dropped lower. The heat faded. The horizon went dull, and for the first time since the desert began, the light looked away first. Far below, the Jackal walked through tunnels of old machinery, each wall lined with glass panels still faintly glowing. His reflection followed him in broken fragments, 1,000 copies of the same silent witness. The hum rose around him, deep and ancient, like the last breath of something that once tried to be a god and forgot how. He didn't slow. He knew the sound. It was the world remembering itself, and finally realizing it had been burning the whole time.